Logos TV welcomes you to a new segment of Coptic Civilization. I'm Michael Saad. Our segment today is on the vision for the Church of His Holiness Pope Tawadros II. And our guest is Professor Nelly van Doorn-Harder at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Welcome, Professor Nelly van Doorn-Harder.
Thank you. Welcome to you.
Professor is author of several books on Coptic studies. One of them is Contemporary Coptic Nuns, published in 1995. And then her second book, she was co-editor, and the title is Between Desert and City, the Coptic Orthodox Church Today. And her most recent book, published in 2011, The Emergence of the Modern Coptic Papacy, co-authored with Dr. Magdi Gerges. And these are three books, and because she's professor of Islamic Studies at Wake Forest University, and earlier at Indonesian universities, and also professor of Coptic Studies at American University in Cairo, for one semester in the year 2004, and authority in the field. She is a member of the editorial board of the Claremont Coptic Encyclopedia. Professor van Doorn-Harder is an expert in both Islam and Christianity and the interface between the two religions in politics, in social life, in education, in history, both in Egypt and in Indonesia. So I am surprised, Dr. van Doorn-Harder, you were in Egypt recently when many Egyptians, even in the diaspora, would not even take the risk of going to Egypt. How did you make the decision to travel to Egypt in January 2013, in the middle of all of this turbulence? What motivated you for that trip?
Well, as you know, Michael, I am very concerned and with what happens to the Coptic Church, and I follow everything closely, as close as possible from so far away. And I just wanted to know what is really happening in daily life, because when I lived in Indonesia, I lived through a revolution, and I have learned the hard way that daily life goes on, although it is sometimes very hard. People are there and they have to, the children are there, they have to go to school and so on. And so I just wanted to see what are the Copts doing and what is the church's leadership doing to guide the church in this very difficult time. And I didn't feel that I should be afraid, because I'm not the only person in Egypt. There's millions of people there, and most of them get through the day both pretty safely. So I just trusted that it would be okay and that I could go.
Welcome back, and we are delighted that you came back to your family and home in North Carolina and professional activities. And I was delighted to see your photograph published with His Holiness Pope Tawadros II. And of course, we know you are a biographer of Pope Shenouda III, and hope one other segment we talk about that. What were your impressions meeting His Holiness Pope Tawadros II, and what is his vision for the church. We want to dedicate this segment for that discussion.
Well, I was very interested just to meet Pope Tawadros, and I knew he was very, very busy, especially it was the week of the 25th of January, right? The commemoration of the second year of the revolution, and things have not gone so well. And so I first went to several people, such as Amma Pachomius, who was the interim pope, as we know, and I spoke to several other church leaders, and I spoke to several politicians to see what is the impression that people have of what is happening in the Coptic Orthodox Church, and what do the leaders say that the plans are. And I heard from many people, people said, oh, this pope is a very creative man, and with that they often meant he doesn't just think A and B, black and white. He thinks of a third solution. He tries to find alternatives. He's accurate, he's detail-oriented, and he has a great concern for children, and he is, of course, charismatic and at the same time very humble. And so what came out of these talks was really that several things. The first one is that I understood, and later on I reconfirmed that with Pope Tawadros himself, that there are 5 areas of concern right now that the church wants to focus on. And the first one is monasticism, the second one education, the third one family issues, the fourth one clergy, and the fifth one the lay councils. And when you say concerned, you know, each of these areas is very large and very important for the Coptic Orthodox Church. So basically, what the overarching idea, as I heard and read it, is that this new leadership wants people to speak and wants to hear their voices. And for example, they told me that now there's going to be more women invited to be in advisory positions. When there are major decisions to be taken, women are part of these decisions. And so my impression was that this Pope and the people around him, the people assisting him, in way take the revolution that has happened in Egypt, which was basically, you know, a call for freedom and for justice and the right to speak, that they take that very seriously inside the church, that they realize things have changed in this day and age. People are more connected, people are more aware, they're more informed than ever before, and they want to have a voice. And so they acknowledge that to have one's voice heard, that should be one of the first concerns of the church. Because if you feel that you are being heard, then you actually feel that someone not just wants to listen to you, but you feel involved. And I think that was the basic, one of the things he also told me when I met him at the last day of my stay and asked him about it. He said, well, we are a team. We want to work in a team, and we want to work together because we are all servants. And so it was, in my view, it sounded extremely democratic, although the word democracy is maybe not the appropriate word to use when you speak about the Coptic Church and its hierarchy.
It has been said that the Coptic Church is the most ancient democratic institution in Egypt. But of course, democracy comes in different sizes and manifestations. For example, the election of the patriarch is perhaps one of the most manifestations of democracy in Egypt. But I'm delighted to hear that His Holiness is holding conferences on each one of these 5 focus areas. And I understand his conference on monasticism, one of the first focus area, was held perhaps in the neighborhood of December or January. And yeah. Were there women religious involved in that conference?
Yeah, that conference, of course, I am not a woman religious, so I was not there. But what some of the bishops told me is that the whole idea to have a conference is to rethink what should church leadership be, and a lot of the church leadership comes from the monasteries or is formation also of priests. Priests who are married, when we know when they, after being ordained, they go to the monastery and they go through a certain education there as well. So one of the big issues was, how should the church leadership, what should it look like? What is our vision for that? How should the spiritual life look like? What should we focus on? And one of the things that they said is that the nuns as well as the monks were both invited, and anybody who could not be there, for example, because they're serving abroad or somewhere else, their voice was invited. So they could write, or I'm not sure if they could phone in how, but they were invited to air their opinion and present their ideas. And of course, we know from the time of Kyrillos VI that, you know, monasticism is the heart of the Coptic Church. And so, in a way, to me, it was very, not just symbolic, but important to see that also Tawadros started with that area of the church by looking at the monastic life today, which of course constantly changes. You know, there's now monasteries in the West. Monks have cell phones. Monks can Skype. There's so many changes, all not just in society, but also in the church and even in the monasteries in the deserts and in the convents, wherever they are, with the big walls around them. And so this was, I think this is a very important area to pay attention to.
I also learned that His Holiness went to Deir al-Muharraq, the monastery of Saint Mary in Asyut, Deir al-Muharraq, to open the International Symposium on Christianity and Monasticism in the region of Asyut and Minya. And the governor of Asyut accompanied him, and both of them, the patriarch and the governor, gave very important speeches, and they were in Arabic, and they were translated instantly to English because of the international scholars body that were involved. And that's remarkable that in the first few months of his office as patriarch, he travels from Cairo to attend a symposium far away in Upper Egypt. That's remarkable. Do you think, and again at the same time, you mentioned that one of his focus areas is education. And that, what does the focus area of education include? Seminaries, public schools that for regular education, like secondary schools, for example?
Well, the first round of education really is in the church and in the seminaries, and the training of future leaders of the church, but also involving those who were not yet involved in that education. We know there was, for example, there's an Institute for Patristic Studies in Cairo that was not really part of the seminary at Ambaruais. And so people like that are going to be, have been invited to join and be part, you know, people who have worked years and years on researching Coptic heritage and Coptic manuscripts, and we're simply not part of the official educational structure. So that would be part of education. Other parts of education are, of course, schools. I mean, one of the things Ambachomius told me was that the Coptic Church is considering to open more Coptic schools to be a stronger part of society again. Because the Coptic school, of course, 80% of students will be Muslim. And that means that, you know, it is a way to serve community, be part of community, and to infuse community with certain values and make sure that children get to know each other. So in a way, there's many levels of education that are being considered. I cannot say exactly, because this is all new, this is all fresh, and many of these initiatives are starting. But I would also like to come back to the visit to Deir al-Muharraq, which to me was also very important, that the Pope told me that he was planning to to visit all the areas, all the communities in Egypt. And you know, it had been a very long time that the Pope had visited that area, but he was planning to visit every community that is under his governance. And then after that, he's planning to visit Europe and the other areas where there are Coptic churches in the world. So he takes his pastoral duty very, very seriously, as far as I can see. And of course, we know one of the focus areas before he became Pope was youth education. So of course, he's very concerned with youth and with children and with their training, with their formation, and with their well-being.
That's great. So beside the 5 areas that he is focusing on that you mentioned, what implementation of his plan is taking shape to achieve these, like in terms of individuals, appointments, committees? Do you have an idea about the direction of his administrative movement?
Right. Well, you know, I'm not a Copt. You know that, and what I learned by talking to people and asking.
Sorry to interrupt you, but how come you are not a Copt and you have an icon of the flight to Egypt behind you? Isn't that the Holy Family in Egypt?
It is. It's one of the icons I once got from His Holiness Pope Shenouda.
Oh, this icon was a gift from Pope Shenouda to you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It has his signature. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it, but here is his signature. It goes from upper side to the lower side of the icon.
Yeah, I can see the inscription. That's his handwriting.
Yeah.
Right, that's wonderful. But you are Lutheran, and I'm not sure if Lutherans use icons in their homes.
Well, if they don't, they should, because that's what I learned from the Coptic Church, that, you know, icons are a wonderful way to remind us of the scriptures and remind us of the important messages. And so I have icons behind me. This is my kitchen. I'm standing in my kitchen. And it's in fact, it's next to my cross. There's a cross here, so that in whichever room we are, we will be reminded of, of the Word of God and the importance of our lives in following the Bible.
So actually, with yourself and the icon and meeting Pope Shenouda in person many times, and Pope Tawadros and Tamav Irini, as we will come to that in another segment, you really are actualizing Christian unity.
I hope so, but it's only me, you know. But in a way, one of the reasons I started to write about the Coptic Church many years ago is because I felt nobody knows that the church exists. Nobody knows that there are Copts. And now when people hear about Copts, it's because the church is being attacked. So to me, it was always very important that, to tell the other side of the story, that there is a vibrant church with a rich tradition, with a wonderful tradition, with incredible, capable, and spiritual and inspiring leaders. And people don't know that. Most people don't know that. And that was always my goal, to somehow write about that and make sure that people would know more about that.
So back to my question about the steps His Holiness has taken to actualize or implement his vision. What if you would kindly give us some examples?
Well, for example, when the family issue is a big issue, right?
Yes.
And I think that and in the family issue, it's the divorce issue that is really painful. If I can quote Pope Tawadros, he said it's a headache. It's a very difficult issue, and because we have all these unclear rules, you have the 38 rules, then you have the rules of Pope Shenouda, then the courts in Egypt, they can choose which set of rules they use, and so there's a lot of unclarity. And so the first thing, the first round of advice is going to be taken, and that I understand that will happen in March, from a conference where scholars and lawyers and judges and also people who went through a divorce or who tried to get a divorce or who were struggling in their marriage, where they will be speaking or will be heard. So all voices will be invited, and so the whole idea is that, you know, after vetting ideas, is to rethink how can one find a balance between the law and between pastoral care. I have no idea what will come out of that, because of course this is a very difficult issue. But the fact that, you know, this will be something that is going to be discussed by a large range of people with different ideas and different backgrounds, I think that is very significant. And that is a big change in as far as I can see, in how the church operates.
As we come to the conclusion of this segment on the vision for the church by His Holiness Pope Tawadros II, I would like to ask you for a final word in conclusion.
Yeah, well, I wait, let me get my paper now.
Please.
No, but because you know, what I realize is how important it is that a leader of the stature of a pope, and also for that matter, the bishops and the priests, that they read the signs of the time, and the signs of the time, and that the signs of the time are that people want to speak their mind, people want to have their voices heard, but also that they respond to the needs of the people. That is also something very important. So it is, and to include who feels left out. Those are all elements that are basically very present in Egypt these last 2 years. And as we know, in society, we are not really making great strides with truly applying all these ideas of justice and democracy. So my impression was that within the Coptic Church, what is going on right now is a much more democratic process than what is happening in Egyptian society.
Thank you so much, Professor Nelly van Doorn-Harder, Professor of Islamic Studies at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and author of several books on the Coptic Church and Coptic civilization and Coptic monastic life, and also on several Islamic topics. We are grateful for this opportunity. Our viewers, thank you for watching us. This is Logos TV, Michael Saad.